Welcome to the OPSQC podcast, helping entrepreneurs, innovators, and small business owners scale to profitability. The goal of this podcast is to showcase real businesses, real owners, tell their stories, learn a little, and have some fun while doing it. Today, please welcome Neil Schwan of Schooley Mitchell, which is an expense reduction franchise firm here in the greater Chicago area. Schooley Mitchell offers a wide range of expense reduction tools, ranging from telecom, waste disposal, LTL repetitive billings, and more. Neil and I are also co-founders of an Efficiency Mastermind Group. Neil, thanks for coming and joining the show.
Hi, thanks, Jared. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on your show. I've watched some of your others, and it's been very interesting and insightful, so I'm honored to be one of your guests.
We appreciate those comments. So could you give the listeners some background on Schooley Mitchell?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So Schooley Mitchell is a franchise model, and it's based out of the Toronto area in Canada. And I own the Chicago office for Schooley Mitchell. And Schooley Mitchell has been around for 20 years. They were founded out of a accounting firm. And they had found that this accounting firm, Schooley Mitchell, had found significant amount of savings and possible savings and misbillings in the telecommunications space. So they spun off a consultancy that was helping businesses kind of rein in those costs and find lost money. And then from there, over the years, every couple of years, they've added additional expense categories. So Schooley Mitchell is now the largest independent cost reduction consultancy in North America. They have 130 offices in the United States and Canada, 290 consultants, and about 23,000 clients. And the 23,000 clients is what really helps the business thrive, because it's a lot of contracts and things to draw on to help our new clients save money.
You guys are actually, you win the award for being the very first franchise owner.
All right.
So, and that's one of the reasons I did want to have you on, because being that's a unique aspect, it's another view of entrepreneurship. You know, some people say, oh, well, it's not really entrepreneurship. There's different levels of entrepreneurship. There's acquisition entrepreneurship, where you buy an existing business. There's entrepreneurship where you run the startup on your own or with co-founders. But there's this other piece here where you're interested in owning your own business. You want to go off, but you want some structure already built in. So franchises offer that unique aspect, right? So could you kind of walk us through that process? Like when you decided you wanted to be a franchisee of Schooley Mitchell, what was that process like?
Yeah, I had been in the trade show marketing business for 28 years, and that was going really well. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the contact with people. I was always on the sales side of that. And when that hit a pause in last March, in March of 2020, I kind of looked for some other things to do. And I had always talked about owning my own business with my father and my brother. We'd always talk about different ideas and possibilities. And even when I would walk into a shop, when I'd walk into a small business and see the guy that owns the place sitting there, I'd just be like, I would always think that sounded really, really interesting to do, and was interested in that. I had gotten a little bit later in life and starting completely from scratch, especially when it was thrust upon me, when it wasn't something I could plan for months and years in advance. When I came across Schooley Mitchell as a franchise, I thought, wow, this could really be a good opportunity to get a little bit of a leg up, just a little bit of a head start on doing it. One of the things they offer is this franchise model offers is that you operate your business independently in your local market. But because of the nature of our business, which I guess we'll talk about in a second, but you really need a large database of potential vendors and clients and contracts to draw on.
Sure.
And that's what the Schooley Mitchell system allows you to do, is to go back into the system and draw on that database of information and contracts to make sure you're able to get the best deals for your client.
Sure. So as far as the structure, do they help with all that? The formation of the business? I mean, they already have these things that they can walk you through. So pretty much the legal entity portion they can help you with.
Yeah, absolutely. I started my own business with a local attorney. And then Schooley Mitchell provided a lot of things as an outline. So a business plan outline, a lot of freedom to set it up your own way, but at least you had that starting point. You knew what it would take to get the business plan together to qualify to get the franchise, but also if you needed funding, that type of thing. As well as they have a lot of experience from the other 130 franchises that have started up to give you lots of tips and connections to get everything else started and off the ground.
Okay, very good. And where did you hear about Schooley Mitchell? Like, how did you come across this? Was this something that you found on the internet or recommended through a friend?
Yeah, it was kind of a combination. So when I decided that I wanted to start up something on my own, I was looking for something that could help really initially all of my clients that I had in the trade show business that would be falling on hard times. So I was looking for something initially that I'd just start on my own in some way to help them. Even at that point, maybe temporarily, was something I was thinking, well, if I could just find a way to help people until we get through this thing. And I started looking at ways to cut costs initially in the trade show industry, so in shipping
Mm-hmm.
and credit card processing, that kind of thing, and came across the Schooley Mitchell name and had done some kind of searching around on LinkedIn and on the internet, and then a person who was affiliated with Schooley Mitchell called me up
Mm-hmm.
and had seen that I had been looking around and really explained the model to me. And I thought, wow, that's almost perfect. It's almost exactly what I was looking for. It was
Sure.
something that could help out people affected by the pandemic, but still had some long life afterwards. And knowing that they've been in business for 20 plus years and helped companies in good times and bad, it just sounded like the right opportunity to explore. And then I researched Schooley Mitchell for probably 3 months. Really deep dive while I was doing some other things, but really a deep dive into how they operated. I interviewed probably 20 existing franchise owners across the country to get an idea of how things went for them and what it would take to be successful.
That's good. You did your homework there. So from the point of view, decided you wanted to do something, you contacted Schooley Mitchell to the time you actually executed and had the franchise up and running. Um, how long of a time frame would you say that was?
Yeah, I think that was 3 months from when I initially contacted them. I'm definitely interested. I think it was 2 months. I was researching it before that. From the time I contacted them and said I was definitely interested in moving forward, it was about 2 months.
That's extremely fast.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's benefits to that because they have canned processes, they have canned marketing materials, things of that nature you can build upon.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very lucrative aspect, to look at when you look at franchise as a form of business ownership.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for shedding the light on there. So you already talked a little bit about why you pursued Schooley Mitchell, right? Why you pursued this life in expense reduction, cost reduction, basically to help people. You saw the COVID pandemic was coming out. People are going to be impacted. I see, in my work with other people that it's very common that these areas you guys focus on are overlooked areas. Can you comment further on that?
Yeah. The initial thing that you notice about our proposition is that it saves money.
Right.
But I think a bigger aspect of it is that it addresses an issue of resources and time.
Yes.
So small to medium-sized businesses, they probably know that they're not paying what they should for the expenses that we work on. But they're very busy, running their business and getting new customers and keeping existing customers happy. And oftentimes the financial side of their business is a little bit leaner, and they're focused again on meeting payroll, getting their vendors paid on time, and that type of thing. And that's really where Schooley Mitchell can come in. We can take a look at all the different expense categories that we work on and find out if there's some areas for savings, and then really dive deep into that and look for ways to save costs with their existing vendor, and then kind of do a miniature RFP for them and get 2 more bids to look for the best possible options for them. And that's all with no upfront cost. So it gives them the chance to investigate improving their costs with very little resources, time and resources dedicated from their side, from the client side.
So you said no upfront cost to do this. So you guys come in and you do the analysis and provide them the options basically for free. And then you guys only get paid on the back end if they execute.
Right. We have two billing models. One is an upfront hourly fee that we bill in 10-hour blocks.
Okay.
But our more popular model is the contingency. And that's when we will, basically what we do is we take a look at their business expenses in one or more of the categories.
Sure.
And we take a look at their current vendor, look to improve the parameters there, look to eliminate unneeded features and costs, look for any misbillings, and kind of improve the setup with their current vendor. And once we have that set, then we know what we're looking for in the rest of the marketplace. We go out and get 2 more bids. If they choose one of those bids and one of those new opportunities or new options saves them money, then we share in a percentage of the savings for 3 years. And then during those 3 years, we monitor the account parallel to them. They still have a direct relationship with their vendor, but we monitor it to make sure that the vendor or the supplier is living up to the agreement that they've made.
And that's, once again, going back to resources, small business owners, entrepreneurs, like to have somebody else watching out, making sure you're getting the best rates on, your repetitive expenses, right? Those items, like you mentioned before, and I think, when we talked earlier, it was like waste disposal, telecom, things of that nature, things you may not even be looking at, right?
Right.
So let me ask you this, is there a certain threshold of savings that has to be in place for you to execute the free analysis model?
It's a very low threshold, and we generally can determine that from the short initial call before we would decide whether to work together, just see if it's worthwhile for the client or for us. But we want to talk to just about anybody because you can determine that pretty quickly based on an amount. And I never like to say that it's a size company or a revenue, a company at a certain revenue, because there can be really small companies that have certain categories where they have a lot of expenses.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great point. So why did you go down this path of becoming a small business owner? I mean, was there a bug? I mean, because you could have worked for other companies. I understand the whole trade show thing kind of dried up with COVID.
Yeah.
But why not look for a job with another company? You mentioned that it kind of appealed to you being in businesses and seeing other people running their companies. What was the major motivating factor there?
Yeah, it had always been, like I mentioned before, it had always been something I'd thought about. And then, I wish I hadn't done this, but you go along and there's never the right time, right? I'm too young, or I just got married, or, whatever it was. And there was just this part of me that I thought, this is just the perfect chance. It's been laid out there for me. It's definitely not the perfect chance as far as the economy goes. You can't meet with people and you can't do that. But my other options have been taken off the table, right? I don't have a job now. It's just the perfect opportunity. And the reason to do it on my own was I had always thought that when I was helping people in my other job, I would think to myself, well, if this was my business, I would do it this way, and it just the right time, and it was the right chance to do something on my own and have something of my own to be able to help people and
Sure. So there's no one event really that pushed you over. It was kind of like this combination of events.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. You mentioned before about, your age, you're thinking you're kind of starting later in life. If you look at the small business statistics, most entrepreneurs are actually in their 40s.
Really?
So it's a pretty interesting when you look at the growth engine, the small businesses, entrepreneurs being the growth engine of our economy. And people tend to get that experience, right? They tend to figure out what they want to do. And then in their 40s, they get to that point where they're ready to leave the nest, kind of break free and do it. So you're exactly in the demographic, right? Sweet spot.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about Chicago. Why Chicago, right? I mean, because with this opportunity and being it's a franchise, you really could have gone anywhere.
Yeah. I've been born and raised in Chicago, been here my whole life. My previous experience was a little bit more regional. I had clients all over the country, but kind of focused in the Midwest. And then I think something we'll talk about later, but my family is here, and a real big, while I'm running this company on my own and my family's not involved technically, my family was a big part of making this possible. You know, I talked with my wife about this extensively. She's still employed here in the Chicago area. And I just felt like if I was going to kind of build this new business off of the contacts and the businesses that I'd already known, trying to help them, that Chicago would be the perfect place to start it, to kind of start local and to leverage the relationships and help people that I already knew.
That makes sense. Leveraging the existing relationships you have here to kind of move you forward. You mentioned about your wife, being that support, and support in starting a business is extremely important. I've had numerous conversations with different owners and different people on the podcast about this, right? How important was the family support to you? And was it, well received by all of your family and friends overall?
Yeah, it really was. I have a son in high school, and we would always talk about possible businesses, and when you're in high school, it's big ideas,
Yeah.
Space travel and whatnot. But so when I came up with the idea, I mean, I was cautiously optimistic and wondering how they were going to react. And yeah, when I started talking about it, they were just pushing me, from behind, just, pushing me to jump off the diving board. They were just so excited because I had always talked about it and they knew it was something I wanted to do. And then with my wife still working, and it's kind of funny that COVID, the pandemic, made everybody cut back anyways. So we weren't going to go on a big vacation, and we weren't going to do some things anyways. So it wasn't asking for all the sacrifices in the name of my new venture. But they were all on board, especially my wife. So it was a real family thing.
COVID has been an opportunity for a lot of people. A lot of people like to look at the negative side of COVID, but I mean, for a lot of businesses, it's and a lot of people like yourself, right? People have started businesses in this pandemic. People have looked at alternate ways to create funding or income for their family. I love it that you have the family support behind you, and being that you have a son in high school, leading by example as a parent and showing your children what's possible is a really great piece. I have a daughter who's a teenager as well, going into high school next year, and I see where just little things. You see the little impacts of what you're doing kind of translates to their thinking, and that's extremely rewarding as a parent. Thinking about your family, is there anybody who actually offered support and interacted within the business itself? So not just the external maybe emotional and cheerleading, but more of being involved in the Schooley Mitchell business. Anybody doing anything like that?
Not at this point. I've had so many people offer, when they found out that I was starting something, offer, financial assistance. Luckily, I didn't have to rely on that. I had some other ways of making it happen. But no, so far I haven't done any, there haven't been anybody directly involved in the business or as a client that's from family. But I will say the friendships that I have built, both personally and professional friendships, have really been what has helped get the business off the ground. People giving me the opportunity to work with them, to take a look at their expenses when I knew it wasn't something they were maybe thinking about at the time. That's been a real help.
Absolutely. Those people are extremely valuable. So has it been a slow ramp up, or has it been a hockey stick? What's the launch of Schooley Mitchell look like?
Yeah, it's been slower than I had expected. So, which I guess is what everybody says, right? So I assumed there was going to be this great demand, and that that things were going to take off with hard work, but that we're going to take off. One thing I didn't calculate for, and I'm hoping things like you and I are doing will help, and I do a lot of talking to people, is there's a large trust factor that has to be built into the offering, the proposal that I have, which is there's no upfront costs, but you're investing time. It's not a lot, it's just a couple of hours of time, but you're also allowing someone from the outside to kind of peek under the hood, to take a look at where you spend your money. I mean, it's not proprietary information. It's usually not sensitive. but it's still getting a look at what your expenses are.
Mm-hmm.
And it requires a large amount, strong level of trust, which is why friendships that I built were a real key into getting things started. So most of my new business needs to come from a longer nurturing cycle, a little bit longer nurturing cycle, or from referrals.
Yeah.
And that part of it has made the ramp up a little bit slower than I expected. But once that trust is built, companies will often give you the chance to take a look at one area of their business kind of on a limited basis to see if you can help them. And then you can kind of prove the concept from there and then kind of grow.
Sure. I mean, being prepared for a slow start is always key, right? Making sure you have enough gas in the tank, which is, money, right?
Yeah.
Money or funding. I actually talked to a business owner the other day who, they started a business right out of college, and, kind of naively, they thought they'd be swimming in funds immediately, and it took them 2 to 3 years. So they had to be creative. I mean, they succeeded, but back again to that point of what's your plan coming out of the gate and what's the marketing plan? Um, Relative to that, did you guys did you create a formal business plan with Schooley Mitchell, or did they have something canned that they kind of dropped in your lap and you then studied that?
Yeah, there is a kind of a roadmap laid out for you,
Okay.
an outline. Not something that you need to follow exactly, because it kind of depends on what your contacts and what your experience are from the past. But luckily, there was that, like I said, a roadmap from what was successful for other
Sure.
franchisees, and then I based mine kind of off of that. And it's there's calling on your existing clients in the network, and then building a new network, because it's a slightly different type of network that you're looking for than what I already had. And then some other forms of outbound marketing and I get a lot of content marketing support that can be tweaked and adjusted from the franchise as well. From Schooley Mitchell, I get that, and I can adjust that. So that helps save some time in creating brand new content all the time.
Sure. Referral networks, very strong, right? I know you and I are working on a mastermind group together in the manufacturing space. So that's, key, those referrals, because you extend, now there's somebody who already has a built-in rapport or relationship with you to help, enter into new ventures, into new contexts. It really depends on the type of business you're in relative to what marketing channels are going to produce for you, right? I mean, there's one thing to try and mass market out to the everybody out there, but it sounds like with Schooley Mitchell, that's not something that would be of benefit. You really need to be targeted in your messaging.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm doing some general networking outreach through associations and referral groups, and I have a couple of things that I'm working on that are a lot more targeted. The Efficiency Mastermind Group that you and I are working on has been great. Small manufacturers are really a perfect target for Schooley Mitchell, because really all of the categories that we consult on, they could benefit from. Not that they would, but there's that possibility. And there's a lot of times that there's some significant amount of waste. They're focused on their manufacturing waste and maybe not on their business expenses. So there's some really good chances there. And that's some areas I'm focusing in, like I said, with the Efficiency Mastermind, and then also looking to kind of join in and really more get involved in some industrial and manufacturing associations, so that I can better understand how they think and how they work while I'm building relationships.
And like you mentioned, the chambers, the county chambers are great avenues for that. I'm more than happy to introduce you to the McHenry County Chamber of Commerce. They're extremely active chamber, one of the most active, I think, in the Northwest Illinois area.
Yeah, absolutely. I went to one of their kind of open networking events, and they're fantastic. Frank Hostica kind of teed up a lot of that, and Peter Galt is carrying the torch forward and doing a great job with it. So kudos to those guys. Big shout out to those guys. So name the person, or maybe not person, or persons, right? Who have helped you the most get this off the ground, right? I mean, when you look back at
this last few months of this wild ride, right? Who been the people that really came in and helped you move it forward?
Yeah, the first one, I feel like this is Academy Awards, but the first one, of course, is my wife. I mean, really,
Yeah,
just having a good partnership for someone to get you going and to be behind you that way was just so important, because I would not have done it if she wasn't 100% on board.
sure.
And but more on a business sense, the people that really helped, and these were strangers to me when I started this, were the other franchisees of Schooley Mitchell. So, while they have a vested interest in Schooley Mitchell doing well, they certainly don't work directly for the headquarters.
Right.
So they were willing to give me their time, sometimes extensive time, and kind of look into their business and how they do it, um, and going through their process, even some role playing with me.
Hmm.
And this is kind of outside of what they would normally have to do. And some had more time than others. Some were newer and were really busy trying to ramp up, and others are really paying it forward. So it's something I'm looking forward to, in year 4 or 5 of my business, being able to help people within the Schooley Mitchell system, and even outside of that, small businesses that are starting up, that are in a similar model to what I do,
Yeah,
giving advice and really helping people make that decision, and even beyond that, even helping them get started. That was a
sure.
real key.
I mean, having a supportive spouse is key. I've seen people start businesses where the spouse wasn't on board or wasn't even in the discussion, and the added stress that provides takes away from your focus on the business and what you're
Mhm.
growing, and can actually delay and stall a lot of things and create
Yeah.
other problems downstream. So having spousal support is can't be understated, right?
Yep.
For those other people who were in the Schooley Mitchell system that provided you with different avenues of learning the trade, right? That networking aspect, right? And I think it's gotten stronger during COVID. I think during
Mhm.
COVID here, people have learned the need for a strong network. And there's a lot more people willing to network in that regard. A lot more, people out there, still don't understand networking like I think
Yeah.
they should. Relative to, you need to give a little, like you said, you need to pay it forward in order to get something in return. If you're
Mhm.
always going out and being a taker, it's probably not going to work out the way you think. So
Yeah.
definitely going into it with a more of an altruist type mindset is definitely helpful. So
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I know that my previous work, I did a lot of networking, but it was very passive. I was involved in associations, and I was on the trade show floor, talking to a lot of people, and
mhm,
just very passive. Over time, you get to know people. And if you heard of something, you passed their name along, and it worked well, but it was just um, very much like that. When I've started this business, and the people that I've met that do networking um, in a more intentional way, it's
mhm,
been fantastic. I mean, I talk to people, I learn about their business, and then I go back and look for people that I can introduce them to immediately. Not always a customer,
yeah,
but certainly somebody that kind of furthers their networking, and hopefully, a direct customer from time
sure,
to time. And that's, it gives you some wins in between your regular wins. If you can
yeah.
hook somebody up with somebody that's going to help their business, it's nice.
There's some people that come to mind when we talk about paying it forward. JD Gershbein, he's a connection of mine on LinkedIn. Guy is an incredible connector. He's one of the first wave of people onto LinkedIn when it started. But he just gets it, right. He's all about purposeful. His words are purposeful, intentional connections and networking. And he also talks about pruning your connections on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
Periodically going back and looking at who's not collaborating, or who's only in it asking for me, those
Mhm.
types of things, and just kind of weed out those people, so you grow this garden of fruitful connections. And it's a concept that, until somebody actually says it, doesn't really just present itself to a lot of people. Some people are just naturally helpful and they get it, and
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. And I like to view myself as a person who is helpful to others before I start asking for anything in return, because try and understand where you can help, right?
Mhm.
helps you kind of craft where you can be of service, right?
Right.
So I think networking is definitely something that in schools they should be looking at teaching as well. So, I mean, you talked about the passion and determination of why you wanted to do this business. You talked about how you formed the business. What about the future? When you look 5 years down the road, and I don't want to go any more than 5 years. I know people say, "Oh, 5 years," because even,
Yeah.
I mean, things change within months, especially within the COVID environment. So, where do you see yourself and Schooley Mitchell in 3 to 5 years?
Yeah. There's a few things that I have that are kind of targets in 5 years. I'd love to be kind of up and running and having a real engine of existing clients that are helping me drive more referrals that way. And then my external referrals, I can be a little more relaxed and not as nervous about that part of it, because it should have a snowball effect. So that's
Right.
one thing. The other thing is to grow the business to a point where right now it's just me, I'm a sole entrepreneur, but I'd like to have a couple of other people on board in selling and in administration. One of the big things that has happened early on is that I've worked with a couple of nonprofits,
Oh,
and that's been really exciting because a lot of nonprofits have no paid employees, or if they do, they have one or two, and they have no time to look at their expenses in this area.
right.
They're just barely, keeping all the balloons in the air, and that would be a part I'd really like to be able to work on after, like I said, my engine is up and running, to be able to help out some nonprofits, because any money you save them goes directly to helping their cause.
Absolutely.
So I think that's something that I'd like to be able to have a more concerted effort on at the end of a 5-year kind of ramp up.
Yeah, that's usually a question I ask all of my guests is, how you're giving back, how you're contributing back to community. That's extremely important to me. In my one business, Parchment, I'm very active with the autism groups. Did a 5K autism, Chicago Autism Research Project and Gigi's Playhouse and Ronald McDonald House. So I think it's important to give back, and I agree. I think your services are a great fit for a nonprofit because, like you said, they're resource constrained. And as long
Right.
as they're resource constrained and they still have expenses, you want to make sure you're controlling those. So that's where an organization like yourself can really jump in and help. I definitely see a synergy there. So when you look at marketing channels, we talked a little bit about referral networks, things like that. What marketing channel has proved to kind of be king for you? What's the best marketing channel you've seen?
Mhm. Right now, I would say it's LinkedIn. What I do is, really focused on business to business, and even so, the businesses that I work with are also business to business
Mhm.
most of the time. So that's been a really good channel for me. I'm looking
Sure.
to ramp that up a little bit further. So far I've been doing that a little bit just on my own,
Right.
with some support of my head office, trying to post a couple of times a week and really dive in and use it as a resource to learn about people, and then to make connections through LinkedIn. But I'm looking to get a little bit more intentional and organized with LinkedIn.
Okay, very good. I can definitely help you with that. I can put you in contact with people who can help you with that.
Okay.
What is, what's the biggest lesson that you have taken away from this experience creating your franchise with Schooley
Yeah.
Mitchell?
I guess the biggest lesson is to be flexible in your goals and in your time frame. I know that you start any venture or any project, whether it's business or not, and you're supposed to set these goals and not compromise. To be tenacious and to really get after it, which is still important. But definitely to be open to the idea that when things aren't going well, while it might be a failure, that it's not going as fast as you wanted, to refocus, set new goals or set shorter term goals, intermediate goals. That's the biggest lesson I've learned. I think I had a shining star out in the way off in the distance, and I needed some more internal or intermediate goals along the way.
Sure. Chunk it down. It's
Yeah.
I'm one of those people, we set goals, we set objectives. I have my daily checklist. Checklist Manifesto is a great book I recommend to everybody, for various reasons. But that burn the boats mentality of,
Yeah.
don't look back, just you're going 100%.
Right.
I think one of the things I see with business failures, right? When I use the word failure for a business, I'm talking about somebody who quits.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't think if you have a business that's underperforming and you're still driving and trying to do things to get better, I don't view that as a failure. Business failures are where people quit and just stop, and they're no longer being persistent. To be an entrepreneur, to be a small business owner, franchise owner, you have to be persistent. So yes, you have to be flexible. You have to maybe alter the compass and direction a little bit, as it is warranted to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. Chunking down the big projects to the little bite-sized pieces, really critical. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's a great conversation point. Not a lot of people really recognize, right? Is yeah, set the big goals though. I mean,
Yeah.
that's one thing I'm extremely passionate about, is set the big goal, because even if you fall a little bit short on a huge goal, it's better than setting a goal that's way too easily attained. And yeah, okay, it may feel good to cross the finish line, but you could have gotten so much further had you had a big, hairy, audacious goal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would
Question
definitely
for
agree
you.
with that. One thing that kind of goes along with that I would
Yeah,
mention is I think that celebrating the intermediate accomplishments. I think that
absolutely.
sometimes we get caught up in, well, it was just, it's just one client, it's not that big. You're still pushing towards the end. There's nothing wrong with stopping for 15 minutes and just being excited and being happy to kind of keep yourself going. I mean, that's the reason I got into this business, and that's what I liked about my previous jobs, is that chance, that opportunity when you're with a client at the end of a project or at the end of a savings.
Mhm.
And they're happy. I mean, that's really what you're going for. And if you don't celebrate that, then you're losing out on one of the reasons you're in business.
That is a great point. I love that, because if there's anything I'm not really great at, it's taking the time, stepping back and saying, hey, that was a win, right? I mean, I recognize the win,
Yeah.
but I'm always off to the next goal, and I'm missing an
Yeah.
opportunity. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah.
Definitely something I think everybody
Yeah.
out there
Enjoy
listening
it a
is
little,
paying
right?
attention to. So great points there. Great points, Neil. I really appreciate those. Let me ask you this: as far as somebody listening to the podcast today, how can they help support you and your business with Schooley Mitchell, outside of the obvious, which is using your service?
Yeah. The areas that I would like some help in and some support in is, like I mentioned earlier, I really feel like I can do the most help and be the most service to small manufacturers, other businesses as well, but I have a handle on how a lot of other businesses work. But those small manufacturers, so I'm looking for ways to learn more about how small manufacturers and how they run their facilities. So that's some of the areas that I'm looking for, either connections or associations or forums where I can get to understand them better, so that when I come to help them on expenses, there's a way to there's a better understanding on my part.
So to take that and kind of narrow the focus a little more, is there any certain types of small manufacturers you're really looking at?
That would be that's really kind of determining. That would be another area that I would need, that I might need some help. And I haven't really chosen a particular subcategory.
Sure.
But yeah, that's a good
Because
question.
it's pretty, I mean, it's pretty broad, right? I mean, with small
It's very
manufacturers,
broad.
you've got
Yeah.
injection molders, you've got stamping houses,
Mhm.
you've got fabricators, you've got machine shops. I mean, there's just such a wide breadth. I mean, paints and coatings. I mean, there's a lot of people in the small manufacturing space. So maybe taking
Right.
and looking at how you kind of form a niche, right, to really serve one
Right. That's a very good point.
might be something worth it. So
Yeah.
definitely, if you're out there listening to this podcast and you want to get engaged with Neil, What's the best way to get a hold of you, Neil? Is it through email, LinkedIn? Which do you prefer?
Yeah, the best way is to reach out to me by email, but certainly on LinkedIn. I check LinkedIn at least twice a day. So if that's a more comfortable way for you to reach out, is to reach out to me through LinkedIn. Love the opportunity to learn about anybody's business.
Absolutely. And, tell them the OPSQC podcast that you heard the podcast, you saw Neil on there and you saw the opportunity. It's all about networking. That's what this is about, right? Power to the network. So Neil, thank you so much for taking your time, sharing your experiences here. Like I said, you're the first franchisee that we've had on the program.
All right.
Always a pleasure. I look forward to our collaboration with the Efficiency Mastermind Group. And if people want to learn more about that, they can definitely get a hold of Neil or myself, and we're happy to talk about it. So, but thank you for sharing your experiences. I'm anxious to see what the future holds for Schooley Mitchell and how you guys really ramp this up and bring more value to that small business space, which is, like I said, it's a growth engine of our economy. Any parting words for people on the podcast here?
Yeah, thank you, Jared. I've enjoyed working with you in our other ventures, and I just really appreciate the opportunity to be on this podcast. You're really building a great resource of information through these podcasts, and it's an honor for me to be on it. I'm looking forward to diving into a lot of the things that we talked about. It's uncovered some ideas for me, so I'm excited to work on that. So thanks a lot.
Excellent. I always love the conversation there, Neil. So thank you again. And to our listeners, be well, be safe, and be productive. Thank you for joining us on the podcast. To reach out and learn more about Schooley Mitchell and Neil, you can find them on LinkedIn. Also, you can go to the Schooley Mitchell website. Link is below. If you want to recommend somebody to appear on the podcast as a guest, please email us at info@opsqc.com. If you're interested in sponsoring a podcast, please reach out to us at the same email. We'd love to have your support.